then became a protector of Buddhism. In art, Yama is most familiar as the being holding the Bhava Chakra, or the Wheel of Life, in his claws. He also sends messengers to man in order to remind them that he is not invincible of death, sickness, or old age. Yama would ask, "Have you seen a young, tender infant lying prone in his own urine and feces?" The infant was Yama's first divine messenger, warning the man he was not exempt from birth. Yama would also ask, "Haven't you seen an old woman or man in 80 or 90 or 100 years, crooked and leaning on a cane, miserable, broken-toothed, gray-haired, bald, wrinkly, and blotchy?" This was the warning that the man was not exempt from old age. The third divine messenger was a man or woman gravely ill, and the fourth was a criminal punished by torture and decapitation. The fifth was a swollen, rotting corpse. Each of these messengers were sent by Yama to warn the man to be more careful with his thoughts, words, and deeds, and if each were ignored, the man would be subjected to torments of various hells. And the Sutta makes it clear that the man's actions, not Yama, determine the punishment. Yamantaka is the wrathful form of Manjushri Bodhisattva of wisdom. It was Yamantaka that conquered the rampaging Yama and made him into a protector of the Dharma. In some versions of the legend, when Manjushri became Yamantaka, he mirrored Yama's appearance but with multiple heads, legs, and arms. When Yama looked at Yamantaka, he saw himself multiplied to infinity. In art, Yamantaka is usually shown standing or riding a bull that is trampling Yama. Since Yama represents death, Yamantaka represents that which is stronger than death, and is arguably the most ferocious of all wrathful deities. Since Yamantaka is the conqueror of death, his principles can be seen as one of the most important within Buddhism, since all followers are essentially trying to defeat their own death and escape the cycle of life. Depending on which form, he has many legs, faces, and arms that hold many weapons, each weapon with their own symbolism. He stamps on bodies not as a killer, but as a force that brings things under his control. He is surrounded by flames, but not hell flames. These are flames of wisdom, understandably, as he is none other than the counterpart of the Buddha of wisdom. His practice is famous for overcoming emotional and karmic obstacles, in particular, the violence of anger and hatred. Hayagriva is another wrathful form of the same bodhisattva as Mahakala. He has the power to cure diseases, skin diseases in particular, and is the protector of horses. Developed from a yaksa attendant of into a tantric wrathful deity, important in the second diffusion of Buddhism in Tibet. The name Hayagriva belonged to two different Vedic deities. One an enemy of Vishnu, another a horse-headed avatara, or manifestation of that deity. Eventually, the two merged. In early Buddhist art, Hayagriva frequently appears as a smallish yaksa figure attending Kasarpana, Amoghagphasa, and Tara. By the mid-17th century, however, Hayagriva was merged with to become a wrathful form of that bodhisattva. While he does appear with a horse's head in Japan, where he is considered a protective deity of horses, Hayagriva is customarily shown with a horse head emerging from his flaming hair. In the Tantric pantheon, Hayagriva initially occupied outer rings of the mandala, but eventually came to be considered a yidam in his own right, a transformation that would grant him the status of a fully enlightened being. Vaisarvana is an adaptation of Kubera, the Hindu god of wealth. In Vajrayana Buddhism, Vaisravana is thought to bestow prosperity, which gives people the freedom to pursue spiritual goals. In art, he is usually corpulent and covered in jewels. He is often portrayed with a yellow face. He carries an umbrella or parcel as a symbol of his sovereignty. He is also sometimes displayed with a mongoose, often shown ejecting jewels from its mouth. The mongoose is an enemy of the snake, a symbol of greed or hatred. The ejection of jewels represents generosity. His symbols are a lemon and a mongoose, and he is also a guardian of the north. Wearing golden armor, Vaisarvana protected the gods from the demigods. Also, since his breath is harmful, he keeps his mouth tightly closed. He confers spiritual and material wealth on practitioners of the Dharma, symbolized by the jewel-producing mongoose in his left hand. Pauden Lamo, the only female Dharma Pala, is a protector of Buddhist governments, including the Tibetan government in exile in Lhasa, India. She is also a consort of Mahakala. Her Sanskrit name is Sri Devi. Pauden Lamo was married to an evil king of Lanka. She tried to reform his husband but failed. Further, their son was being raised to be the destroyer of Buddhism. One day, while the king was away, she killed her son, drank his blood, and ate his flesh. She rode away on a horse saddled with her son's flayed skin. The king shot a poisoned arrow after Pauden Lamo, but the arrow struck her horse instead. Pauden healed the horse, and the wound became an eye. For in some versions of the story, Pauden was reborn into the hell realm for what she had done, but eventually she stole a sword and a bag of diseases from the hell protectors and fought her way to earth. But she had no peace. She lived in a charnel ground, starving herself, not washing, and turning into a frightful hag. She cried out for a reason to live. At this time, Buddha appeared and asked her to become a Dharma Pala. She was astonished and moved that the Buddha would trust her with such a task, and she accepted. As a protector of the Dalai Lama, Pauden is also the protector of the Lamo Latso, the Oracle Lake, southeast of Lhasa. It's a sacred lake and a place of pilgrimage for those seeking vision. It is said that at this lake, Pauden promised Gendan Drupa, the first Dalai Lama, that she would protect the succession of the Dalai Lamas. Since then, high lamas and regents have visited the lake to receive vision that would lead them to the next rebirth of the Dalai Lama. Tshangso Dakarpo is the Buddhist view of the Hindu god Brahma, and isn't as ferocious as the others. Brahma, one of the most important gods of the Hindu pantheon, occupies only a secondary position in Buddhism. His Tibetan name is Tshangspa, and under this term, the ordinary four-headed and two-handed form of Brahma is understood, represented in accordance with Indian concepts. More frequently, however, one encounters in Tibetan religious art the representation of a white, one-headed, and two-handed god named Tshangpa Dakarpo, the white-headed Tshangpa. According to the sadhanas, this god is too identified as the Brahma. He is represented seated on a white horse with his sword and sometimes carrying a banner. He is a warrior god, but not so ferocious in aspect. Behind his crown is a turban, in which there is a conch shell, and he wears flowing garments and long sleeves. His legend is that he often made journeys across the sky and sometimes into the heavens. There he attempted to steal the wish-fulfilling jewel, but was thwarted by guardians. Dissatisfied by his defeat, he continued making journeys to the heavens. Eventually, he started killing all males that he came across and raped all the females that he saw. One day, he came across the goddess Ekazadi with the intention of raping her. The goddess became angry and struck him with her turquoise-ornamented silk breechcloth. It hit him on his thigh, and he became lame. Her striking him is often interpreted as an attack on the negative part of his psyche. Thus, his evil intentions turned into positive ones, turning him into a Dharmapala. Begtese is a war god who emerged in the 16th century, making him the most recent Dharmapala. His legend is woven together with Tibetan history. Soma Gyatso. The third Dalai Lama. The third Dalai Lama was called from Tibet to Mongolia to convert the warlord Altan Khan to Buddhism. Begtese confronted the Dalai Lama to stop him, but the Dalai Lama then transformed himself into the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Witnessing this miracle, Begtese became a Buddhist and protector of the Dharma. In Tibetan art, Begtese wears armor and Mongolian boots. Often he has a sword in one hand and an enemy's heart in the other.